Hello and welcome to a painting demonstration for my large abstract painting, Embrace. I've learned a lot recently about creating abstract art and I really wanted to put it to the test on a larger canvas. Instead of showing you a time lapse of the entire process, which took about a couple of hours if you condense all of the video footage, I cut out sort of all of the boring bits and I'm showing you just bits and pieces of my working on the canvas instead. So every time I stepped back from the canvas to take in the whole project, every time I got paint or had to move the canvas around more, it's all cut out for brevity and entertainment, but just keep in mind that this takes a lot longer to make than it looks. So let's get right into it. I've basically just started making a lot of random marks. The canvas already had structural paste on it to give it this curve that's in the center of the picture, and the rest of it is very much a mixed media piece. I started out by putting on watercolor crayon marks and blurred those up a little bit with paint. I used acrylic paint, spray paint and watercolors to create this piece, and as you can see, it's all incredibly random to start with. Really, I got into this thinking with acrylic paint you can basically paint over anything you don't like, so I'm just going to start putting some marks on the canvas to see where this takes me. I wanted to stay very colorful. I wanted to try out lots of different marks, line work, squiggles, circles, and really anything that I had lying around. So I used not just paintbrushes, but rollers and scraping tools, or just my hands on occasion. Basically, I went from one moment to the next just looking at the canvas and making decisions where to put paint and lines and what tools to use. I think this gives it an incredibly chaotic look, which in the beginning is exactly what I wanted, because then you can always paint over the bits that are too chaotic and bring it all down again a little bit. One thing I would probably do differently next time is I worked very detailed very early on in the picture. So you can see me using paint, pens and pencils again here. And I think I probably would work more from large to small in a somewhat more consistent manner next time. Next, I poured liquid watercolors on the painting to unify some of the colors and to enhance the curve in the center. And of course the structural paste tore a hole into my glove, staining my fingers. Next, I started working on some brush work and adding some more different colors. I was still going more in the direction of this fantastical garden I had been planning to paint before, and was going into much detail, trying to enhance certain graphical shapes I found and getting more blocky colors in between the sort of messy lines. I kind of changed my mind on that at the very end, but it's really nice to be able to see the process and see where I made different decisions. For example, the green that I'm adding here didn't really do much for the final painting, and I painted over most of it later because it didn't really fit the color scheme. I also used funny tools like this tiny roller here, which really made it difficult to cover a lot of space, and it was really just trying out what I had lying around. In the future, on a larger canvas, I think I would start by painting with larger tools altogether before I got into the nitty-gritty details. Because I wasn't sure how to continue, I flipped the canvas around to have a different perspective on it, and I liked it so much more that this is how it stayed until the end. Instead of a rainbow from left to right, I think I preferred the idea that this was almost like a bowl that was catching the paint, or something that could be filled from the top. Somehow that felt like a better option. These soft white areas that I'm painting on are actually some of my favorites, and that's because I'm using a very soft makeup brush to paint them, which gives it this wonderful creamy effect. And in case you're wondering whether I have white paint on my face, no, it's cream. I actually came back from holiday with an incredibly harsh sunburn on the underside of my chin from where the sun had reflected on the swimming pool, so wear sunscreen, everyone. This part of the painting I did after taking a few weeks break and looking at it with fresh eyes. I decided it needed more dark contrast. I quite liked all of the colorful areas, but I wanted to focus it more, perhaps more in the center of the picture. So basically just going to paint over a lot of it with dark blue. I basically considered the sort of base layer of the painting finished, and now was the time to refine it into what would actually become the final painting. I'm working a lot with the soft makeup brush to add blue all around the corners, and I really like how the contrast makes the lighter areas in the bright yellow and the bright neon greens pop out so much more and make them almost seem like they're glowing. This contrast is something I want to definitely carry on into more paintings. I like the idea of using darker, muted colors together with neon accents. So neon pink and neon yellow and neon orange are used quite heavily in the painting, and I really like that color combination. I certainly made a few mistakes in this painting that I would do differently, but it's very hard to tell, obviously, because it's abstract and it could all be deliberate or it could all be an accident. I basically sprayed some watercolor droplets on the painting, which you can see in the center, and I tried to cover them up with opaque white and brights and blue paint, but ultimately it was impossible to hide them. The watercolor pigment was so strong that it was actually really difficult to cover it up. So in the end, I had to embrace it and just leave it in. I think that actually helped with the choice to create these confetti-like sprinkles around it all. So instead of trying to create more smoothness in the center, I ended up using this more and just enhancing the effect, which again makes it a happy accident that turned into a deliberate choice. I now definitely see the final shape of the painting. The two sort of bows on the side of the picture look to me like arms that are embracing the color, almost like the color is escaping in the center, and I kind of like this idea. It gives me the vibe of emotions that spill over, or happiness that you can't contain, or I don't know, just very positive things. Like, I like to look at it and I like the colorfulness, and it makes me feel happy to look at it. And really, if I've learned anything about the abstract painting process, then it's really that, to keep in mind certain emotions that you want to put on the canvas and just let it sort of do its magic on its own. I didn't really set out to paint this particular painting. It just happened that way because I followed what I felt was right and what I felt looked good to me. And I definitely want to do it again. For future paintings like this, I would definitely try and let go even more. So rather than try and plan certain areas or plan certain patterns and shapes, I would just try and embrace the intuitive painting process even more. I will also work on refining my color palette even further to make sure that the colors really all harmonize with each other in an interesting way without adding too many different hues and variations into it. I don't think this is a question of right or wrong, it's really just a question of taste and what you prefer in your painting process. I think I would like to have slightly more clarity whenever I was picking paint. I was often mixing stuff from scratch, and I think I'll pre-mix more colors. That's certainly something I enjoyed, having the colors ready for me. Towards the end of the painting, I mostly added these confetti-like shapes in the center, which was basically after I decided that this is how the final painting would look, and that it would look like someone trying to catch something in their arms. Then I thought if I add more smaller shapes, it creates a little bit more variety between the sort of inside of the arms and the outside of the arms, as it were. However, I've already had some nice, interesting responses to this painting, and quite a few different people have seen very different things in it. And that's really the most fascinating thing about painting abstract art, is showing it to people and getting these incredibly different responses as to what it means to that person. What personal experiences do they bring to the canvas when they look at a painting? That's really what makes abstract art quite fun to look at. Ultimately, I'm very aware that this is one of the first experiments I've done and that I'm very much still finding my feet. I'm still looking for something that I can replicate more often, something I love, some sort of shape combination, some sort of color combination. And it's really nice trying to find my way there, sort of painting by painting. And that is also an important aspect of painting like this. At some point you have to call it done. You have to stop fiddling away at it and basically say the final result may not be perfect, but it is finished and it's nice to look at and interesting to learn from. I finished Embrace in time for the open day that was in September, and also had to teach myself how to hang canvases on the wall with a sort of a gallery hanging wire in the back, so thank you YouTube tutorials for that one. And that's it. I didn't varnish the final result because I didn't want to mess with the surface gloss in some of the matte areas. It's a 1 meter by 1 meter 50 mixed media painting that I really enjoy, and it looks quite good hung up in a large room and looked at from afar. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed the painting process, and I'll see you in another one very soon. Bye bye!